it's Betsy, and today we have a fun video. We are testing out the Glaminatrix Cosmetics You Beauty palette. Now, this palette is a beautiful color story based on Australia. This is what she looks like, and this is an Australian indie brand. Right now, there are no palettes available, but it should be up for pre-sale again soon, and this is a permanent palette in their range. Now, I have used this palette a couple of times. You'll see right here, I'll post a picture of my red look and of my blue look, and I'm still trying to develop my feelings on this. I recorded both of those but decided not to use the footage, and I'll kind of go over why. Okay, so this palette retails for $75 US or $95 Australian. And then shipping to the United States was $15 and $20 Australian. So for me, it cost me $95 US dollars. So we'll go over the color story first. I've got my paper towels out because this palette is a bit on the messy side. So first up, we have the color Straya, which is like an aqua blue with a gold shift. Then we have the color Bloody Oath, which is like a sagey green color. We'll go ahead and give it a little bit more of a swatch. Then we have the shade Chalkers, which is a lavender with a silver shift. Then we have Stitch Up, which this is part of the reason why I laid paper towels in my lap. It is a very messy color. It is like a warm brown, but you can change this out for something darker. That's what it looks like though. But what I mean by it being messy, I will show you my palette. Okay, so if you look, you can see how much powder's already there. Then we have this shade Fair Dinkum. This is like a slate blue, almost a navy, but it is a little bit brighter than a navy. And this is a very dry, kind of scratchy formula, or at least it is in my palette. I'm not sure if I got a dud or not, but that's kind of what it looks like. Then we've got Old Mate, which is one of the multi-chromes in here. So if you look at it on my finger, it's like this mustardy kind of gold, and then it shifts to like a brown, and you can see a dark green in it. So that is Old Mate. Then we have the shade She'll Be Alright, which to me is like a dusty mauve, so it's more of like a nude kind of color. And then we have Budgie Smugglers, which is like a cardinal red. So you can kind of see how there's pieces falling off. Again, this is that more dry formula, but it is very, very messy. Okay. Then we have the shade Whoop Whoop, which is a beautiful butter yellow multi-chrome that shifts to pink and blue. This is a beautiful color. Then we have the shade Struth, which is like a mustard matte. Again, it is that more dry formula. Then we have the shade Flaming Gala, which is like a white, but you can see pink and blue, and like on my finger you can see more of that yellow. It's a very unique shade. But if you notice, like whenever I did my swatch, how it kind of catches, and like when you swatch it, you get kind of hunks in it. Again, I don't know if this is just my palette or if it is all the palettes. You can see the clump of it kind of right in here. It's kind of hard to see. There we go. See how when I kind of cover the reflection, you can see that clump. So I'm not sure if it's just my palette, like if I got a dud, or if that's how it is for everybody. And then we have the shade Good Day, which that is a beautiful orange and green multi-chrome. So this is the color story of the palette. So one thing I can definitely say off the top of, since I've used it several times, the metallics and the multi-chromes are beautiful. I enjoy that. The mattes, so far, I mean, I've been able to make them work after playing with it quite a bit, but they're not my favorite formula. They're a little dry. They're extremely messy considering how, like, they're dry and messy. So I'm not sure if it's like my favorite. It's definitely not my favorite formula. So I'm gonna take, this is a BK Beauty 201. We're gonna go into the shade Struth right here. And one of the things I have learned from using this palette so many times is it is opposite of what I typically like to do for eyeshadow, which is I have to put on like the deepest shade first and then kind of use the lighter shades to blend it out. And then sometimes they kind of blend away to nothing, and it's like constantly re-layering it. So it's definitely not my favorite matte formula. I will definitely say that. And as I said, I'm still trying to fulfill like my thoughts. And as I don't know, because this is my first purchase from Glaminatrix, if this is how all of their mattes are, you know. And depending on price of things, you know, if something's got beautiful, beautiful shimmers and the mattes aren't my favorite, I will still purchase from them because, you know, if it's worth it to me to get the unique shimmers. But this is very expensive in comparison to buying from a US indie brand. So that's kind of where my thoughts are lying, is trying to figure out if it is worth it to me, if that makes sense. Like, I don't want it to seem like I'm coming across harsh on the brand, because again, this is my first experience with the brand, and there have been so many good reviews of this brand and this palette. But, you know, everybody's different, everybody's eyes are different, so it kind of just depends. So I'm gonna take, this is a Sigma Firm Blender in E44, and we're gonna go into that shade Stitch Up to deepen up the outer V, but I'm not applying a whole lot of it, if that makes sense. I want it to kind of deepen it up, but not, I don't want it to be too much, because again, you can kind of see that it, for what it looks like in the pan, what it looks like on the eye is, to me, it looks different. I don't feel like it keeps the pigmentation of the swatch. So like, that's brushing it on. You can kind of see how it kind of blends away and gets a little patchy. So you kind of have to pack it and leave it alone to get it to work. Or at least I did for a lot of these deeper shades, such as Budgie Smugglers and Fair Dinkum. Those were definitely that way. I think the lighter mattes are better than the deeper mattes. So, if that helps. And Bloody Oath, I think, is a really good matte. And I think that She'll Be Alright, which is that Dusty Mauve, is another good matte. So, that's kind of placement. I'm going to take my 201 and kind of go over the edges and hopefully not blend everything away. But it was weird to me, like whenever I was trying to use other shades, like blending things together, on how much my, like, to go over the edges and stuff would pick up the previous color. I don't know. As I said, I'm still trying to, like, I'm doing this look and I'm trying to prepare my thoughts, because I have done a lot of looks trying to see what colors worked, how they worked best. But definitely for Fair Dinkum and Budgie Smugglers, those two worked best if you put them on first on your tacky base and kind of left them alone. I mean, you could go back and re-intensify. but that was kind of the best way to do it, or at least it was for me. So this isn't anything revolutionary as far as eye looks for me. I've done better looks with this palette, but as I said, I'm just trying to finish forming my thoughts. So I wanted to use some of the shades that I hadn't used in previous looks. So we're gonna take, this is the Too Faced Glitter Glue, and we're going to apply that on my lid. On both sides. But yeah, I mean, the shimmers to me in this palette are like the saving grace. I think that they are pretty unique. Like even in my Cleona Multichromes, I don't think I have shades like this. So I'm gonna use the shade Old Mate, because whenever I did my red look, I used the shade Good Day on my lid, and when I did my blue look, I used Straya. So as I said, I'm trying to use as many colors as well. But to me, this is not the palette that you could use, or at least the way that I do makeup and the way my palette is performing, that I would attempt to do like a red and blue look together. You know, to me, this palette is definitely something to kind of keep with colors you know work together, because it will get muddy and it blends away. So again, this is my opinion. And I really don't want it to seem like I'm dragging a brand, because I love indie brands. I have a ton of indie makeup. It is one of my favorite things in the world. And, you know, when I say that, I want, you know, I just want my palettes to work, especially for what I spent on it. You know, I can be a little bit more forgiving if it's not super expensive. So now I'm just taking the brush that I used with the shade Stitch Up and kind of going over my edges to make sure everything's blended and smooth. And then I'm gonna take, this is that 201. Again, just kind of going over and making sure my edges look smooth. So this is, oh, and I want to show y'all, this is the paper towel I have. You can see all the shadows that just fell off either when I was swatching or using my brush. Yeah, not very fun. So, okay. This is what the top of the eyes look like for now. I'm gonna go off camera, do the rest of my face. We'll come back, do the lower lash line, and talk about my thoughts on this palette. So I'm back with the rest of my face on. I used my Melt Sculpt Stack for bronzer today. I used the Melt Sundown Blush. And then I used my Rare Beauty Transcend Highlighter. On my lips, I have the Luxe Lip Liner in, I think this is called So Rare. Yes, So Rare. And I'm almost finished off with my Lunar Lip Gloss in the shade Celine. And then in my waterline, I did use the mustard shade from the Raw Beauty Kristi. This is called Marigold from the Raw Beauty Kristi collab. So let's go ahead and do our lower lash line. So as I said, I've been kind of playing with this palette for a few days and trying to gather my opinions over it. And I do have some opinions. At least for me, with what I've gotten out of it, I don't know if I would recommend it. And that's just because, you know, she's expensive and the mattes weren't amazing for me. I'm grabbing a different brush, this is Sigma E27, and I'm going into Struth, that yellow, and putting that on my lower lash line, because the mattes are pretty bad, or at least they are for me. I can make them work, but I don't like working this much for a palette. I mean, and I'm just gonna be completely honest. The shimmers, the multi-chromes, all that are stunning. But again, I don't know if I've gotten like a dud of a palette either, because I've seen people who've had good luck. So would I be willing to buy something else from Glaminatrix? Yes, I would be willing to give them another shot. But this is definitely not my top palette. But it does have some good stuff. I'm gonna go into the shade Stitch Up. You can see, look, I mean, that's just so messy. And I'm grabbing just the slightest bit to deepen up the outer corner. I'm just kind of using what is there. And I'm like barely picking anything up, and you can see like when I'm blending, like I can see out of my eye, I don't know if you can see it on camera, how much powder is going everywhere. And again, part of the reason why I'm being so hard on this is because it is such an expensive palette. I mean, this is not affordable for most, and if you, for what they would want to spend on one palette. And for me personally, if I want to spend this much on a palette, I want it to be amazing. And I just don't know if this is amazing, or at least by my standards, amazing. And hopefully this doesn't come off as rude. And again, I don't know if this is a dud. That's the big thing that I keep wanting to, like, I don't know if I just got a bad batch, because that does happen. When you're making stuff by hand, and even if you're not making stuff by hand, you know, you can come out where one, for some reason, if things get messed up when they're being produced, you know, you can get a bad one. And that's part of it, is I don't know. I'm using the shade Whoop Whoop, which is, I love this color, in my inner corner. So hopefully that makes sense on what I'm saying. I don't want to judge the whole brand off of just this one palette, because again, I don't know if I got a dud or not, but to me, if this is how all of the palettes are, it's not worth it to me. That's the best way to put it. So this is the completed look. I showed y'all pictures of the other two. I have used every single shade in here except for this lavender color. So I've got a good idea of pretty much everything. And the worst offenders in my mind in this palette that were the hardest to work with was Stitch Up, Budgie Smugglers, and Straya. But Stitch Up is probably the messiest out of them. But yeah, I mean, the shimmers, the multi-chromes, that in this palette are phenomenal. And I want to make sure that's known. So if you want just the shimmers, this might be worth it to you, because, you know, multi-chromes can be expensive. The mattes to me just were not my favorite. They were difficult, and again, I don't know if I got a dud, but this is my feelings. So this is the finished look. What do you think? I think it's pretty. I think it turned out very pretty. But yeah, those are my thoughts. That's my honest opinions. But I guess that's it. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right down below. And if you hit the notification bell icon next to it, that will notify you when I post new videos, which is typically Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then I do a live at 2 p.m. on Saturdays. So I guess we shall see y'all on Saturday. Bye.